Hey everybody, welcome back to the Contrarians. We have a special Dark Horse album edition for you today. We have our lovely Patreons here. Today we're going to be talking about the band Rush, and we're going to be talking about the album Hold Your Fire, which was voted on by our patrons. If you want to join any of these conversations, join us over at Patreon at any tier, and you can jump in on these conversations. We also have a Ko-Fi if you want to support the channel without subscribing on a monthly basis, and we also have a TeePublic link in the description. So basically for today, what we're going to do is normally on these episodes, we pick an album from a band that isn't typically considered one of their better albums, and we go around to our experts in the room, and they tell us what they think about the album, if they're for or against it, and what they give it out of 10, and then we give you a consensus rating at the end. So before we do that, how's everybody doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Rocking and roll.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to read a tiny bit of research that I did, and then I'm going to let the experts have the floor. So first things first. So this album came out, Rush, Hold Your Fire, came out in 1987. It was certified gold and charted at number 13 on the US charts. Ultimate Classic Rock ranked the Rush albums and put Hold Your Fire at number 17. They said by the time Hold Your Fire arrived, most fans were growing tired of Rush's slick, synth-driven 80s sound, and these songs are rarely revived in concert these days, proving that they're still not thought too fondly of decades later. Still, moments like Force 10 and Lock and Key do have their fans. Their number one was Moving Pictures. We did have a regret tonight. Peter Kerr couldn't make it from Rock Daydream Nation, and he gave me this little spiel to say. Rush to me have always been a super intellectual rock group in their songwriting, especially Neil Peart's philosophical lyrics, arrangements, and production. From time to time, their songs can engage the mind more than the heart. In this album, they hit the sweet spot and stir the emotions as well as engage the cerebral, at least for me, 8.5. Prog Archives, currently the album is sitting at a 3.26 rating, and here's one user review. To me, Rush had lost control over their MIDI-controlled high-tech music, resulting in an overproduced and too clinical sound. Far away from the exciting and compelling mid-Rush era featuring albums like Moving Pictures. I simply don't understand that prog heads give 5 stars to this album, but on the other hand, music is a matter of taste, 2 stars. So that's it for my research. I didn't do a ton of research tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it over to the experts. And why don't we start with John C. Why don't you take it away, John? What do you think of the album?
Well, so as I was going back and listening to this album again, after it's probably been a while since I've actually heard this whole thing in its entirety. The first thing that hit me was, would I have embraced this album in 1987? And the answer was probably not. Do I embrace this now in 2022? Absolutely. To me, as Peter was saying about the lyrics, to me, there was so much lyrical content that really struck me with this. So many of the, and I know that Neil's lyrics, but for some reason on this one, it's because I did take such a deep dive into it. This one really, there's a lot of songs that really hit me with this one. I love Force 10. I thought that chugging rhythm of Geddy's bass with Neil's drum pattern, I thought it was a great opener to the CD. The album to me is basically a Geddy and Neil show, but it's not. He's almost like a guest star. So there's not a lot of guitar featured from him, but what he does, it fits in nicely. I get the overproduction part. Again, I think in 1987 I would have passed this album by, but 2022, time stands still. I think there's just so much about this album that just said, slow down. And I wish I could have embraced that at 17, 18 years old in 1987, because now I'm seeing that as I'm getting older. I'm like, yeah, I kind of wish time could stand still just a little bit longer to capture some of these moments. Um, I loved Amy Mann's backup vocals on the song. I thought that was a nice touch. Um, Lock and Key, great song. I thought Mission was a good song. Deep Water or High Water, all good songs. Um, I give this album an 8.
Awesome. Good vote. I'm going to add Peter's vote in there. So we have an 8.5 and an 8. Unless anybody minds that. Should I not add Peter's? No, I'll add Peter.
Go for it.
Awesome. Joe, why don't you take it away next?
Okay, so I'm sure this isn't going to sit well with some of the panel, but this is my third installment of when great bands make terrible albums. And I bought this album. Rush is one of those bands that I bought no matter what, because they were one of the first bands I got into. Was terribly disappointed in it. I still can't get through the album. That being said, I do like Force 10. I like Time Stands Still. And I think I like Time Stands Still because I like Voices Carry by Amy Mann more than Rush, as a Rush song. But the rest of the album I still can't get through. And I don't think Rush should get a pass here. I know they have their fan base, and I'm somewhat part of that no matter what Rush does now is great. But no, this is terrible. This is a terrible album in my estimation. It's way too synth. I remember when it came out, we were even surprised it went gold. When they played live, they wore those Miami Vice suits, had the horrible mullets. Made fun of 2112 when they played it live. They played it really fast and new wave-ish and made kind of a joke of it. It didn't sit well with us as a hardcore fan base. And, subsequently, I came back a little bit more with Presto, Roll the Bones. I thought was okay, but I really didn't start. Counterparts is what brought me back in. I compare that to when Kiss came back with Creatures of the Night. They came back to hard rock. I consider that with Rush, with Counterparts even more so. In fact, Counterparts might be my favorite Rush album, which could be another episode, Marco. But as far as this album, I just think it's terrible. There's 2 listenable songs. One of the songs is listenable because I think it's more like a pop tune from the guest singer that's on it, Amy Mann. So I give it 3 out of 10, and that's my vote.
Why don't we throw it over to Don? Take it away, Don. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. I'll tell you up front, I give this album an 8 out of 10. And I would have even given it a 9 out of 10 because I think it only has one poor song. But because it's not the type of Rush that I love, it's more of a softer, lighter pop rock Rush, but I still love it. I took a point off just for that. I think it only has one bad song, and that's the Chinese, second from the last track about going up the Chinese mountain. That's the only song I don't think is a great song. This was the first Rush album that I was able to buy in real time. I was 15 when it was released. So I remember running out to the record store and I bought it on vinyl, big red vinyl. And I listened to this over and over again. And that was coming from, I think I started listening to Rush when I was 13 and I started with Fly By Night. And so I really love Rush from Fly By Night to Moving Pictures. That is the best Rush. I don't care what anybody says. They'll never do anything better than that. And this isn't better than that, but I always include Hold Your Fire in my top 10 Rush albums. So when I see the reviews where people have this ranked last to second to last or last, it amazes me. I don't really understand it. I think it's great. The albums before this, yes, they were like way too synthy and technical. But this album, it has that synthy sound, but it at least sounds organic. It doesn't sound sanitary like the other ones do. I think one of the reviews you read said clinical. I would agree with that of the 80s albums right before this one, but not this one. It seems very human. And I agree with what John said about it being the Geddy and Neil show, but I don't think so in terms of Geddy's bass. I think this album is on Neil's drums and the vocal melody that they developed for Geddy to sing those lyrics, and which is weird because yes, you hear the bass all through. Guitar is there. It's just used as an embellishment, not as the main feature, like in the old hard rock slash, semi-prog Rush. I don't really, the Rush I like, I wouldn't classify as prog, like Yes or something annoying like that, but it has elements of prog. And so it's not the hard rocking Rush, but I think it's great. Force 10, when it starts out, it's good. That song does have a lot of like sound effects in it. It goes overboard a little bit towards the middle of the song, but it doesn't ruin the song. But Lock and Key, Mission, Open Secrets, Time Stands Still, that's a great pop song. And there's no book written that says Rush can't make a pop song. Why can't they? Other great musicians on par with them, like Sting after The Police, Peter Gabriel after Genesis, which I think Peter Gabriel's better without Genesis. But this time period from around 85 to 87, they were all doing this on their albums. If you look, think about The Dream of the Blue Turtles, and then 10 Summer's Tales, and you had So, and then you had this Rush album. They're all coming out and they're all leaving their genres that made them so famous and incorporating other genres. But Sting and Peter Gabriel, they have to hire musicians to help them. But Rush, they had all the talent right there to do it. So they're exploring pop a little. They didn't go out and do dance music like Sting did. So that's good. I don't think I could have swallowed, a dance tune or a sultry duet with Tina Turner or something. I probably would have not been praising this album as much as if they would have done that. But it's great. And Alex even gets, kind of down and dirty on Prime Mover. If you guys know the song on this Hold Your Fire, Prime Mover, he's playing, just standard hard rock rhythms on the guitar, and he's going crazy with a pinch harmonic sound. And everywhere where you sit there and listen and you hear Alex come in, he's adding these flourishes. He's just not the main show. And that's okay with me, even though I really prefer the older Rush. I definitely 8 out of 10 because I can listen to it the whole way through, particularly on headphones. If I put it on, I don't want to skip a song till I get to that Chinese song. I think it's called Tai Shan. That's when I'm like, okay, I got to skip to the high water. I got to get to the last song. I can't sit through that song. It's not a horrible song. It's just a horrible song for them. So I had a chance when this album came out. My choice was, I was 15, so I was broke all the time waiting for my allowance. And I was like, okay, I can buy the album or I can buy a ticket and go see Rush because they both cost about the same back then. And I said, I'm going to buy the album instead because I couldn't drive. And I would have had to find someone to take me. And I'm glad I bought the album. I'm sure I got a lot more pleasure over the years listening to this album. And the past year, I actually looked up the Rush set list for the show that came to my town, and it was horrible. It was all the 80s Rush. It was so heavy, lopsided on the 80s Rush before this album that I didn't like. I would have hated the show anyway. So it was a good choice on my part. And the only thing, I only noticed this when I listened to it through speakers and the sound is coming through the air instead of directly into your ears off headphones. There's something about the drums, and I know he was experimenting with drums, but I mean, when this album starts, you hear the synth comes in, and it's almost like emulating a church choir going, ah, and then you hear the drum roll come in. It's Rush, and it's just sometimes the drums don't sound the same way they do on the older albums, where they sound like they've been recorded in a big room, and they're warm and rich, and they're just coming to you through space. Sometimes they sound muted, and maybe that's because is he using a lot? I don't know if and where he's using an electronic drum kit on this, but I think I read that he does use some on this album, although I've seen a picture of this big pink drum set. I think it was a Ludwig drum set that he used on this tour and to record this album. I wish that guy who knows all about the drums, the other Peter, he would be able to tell us. But there's something about the drums, but only like in the car or through a regular stereo. It doesn't sound as muted on headphones. So that, if I was going to say one nasty thing about it, that would be it. And the Chinese song. So that's pretty much my opinion. An 8.
Awesome. Another high rating. Thanks, Don. Why don't we go with our resident music nut, John? John, the music nut. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Marco. And it's great to be here. I'm going to piggyback a little bit with Dawn on her opinion as far as Geddy's vocals. And I wanted to point this out before I said anything else. A lot of people don't like Rush because of Geddy Lee's vocals. If you don't think Geddy Lee can sing, have them listen to Hold Your Fire, because his vocals on this album are angelic at times. He sounds beautiful on a lot of these songs. As far as the album itself, it was the one album from the synth era that took a while to grow on me. I felt that Grace Under Pressure and Power Windows, they were very immediate, but this album, and I bought this album probably in the early 2000s. I knew the major songs from the album because I own Show of Hands since it came out in 89. Over time, though, this album really grew on me. For a long time, I loved Force 10, Time Stands Still, and Second Nature. And as time went on, the other songs really grew on me. It is one album where I can say the synths and the keyboards, are really driving the rhythm one. Whereas Signals, Grace Under Pressure, Power Windows, you still had a lot of guitar. Here, the guitar is more here for color, but Alex Lifeson is always from, and then very underrated guitar player. I mean, it's not about how many notes you play, it's what you do with the notes. As far as the songs themselves, Force 10, that's the one that you still hear live when they were still together. That was the one you'd still hear live once in a while. Time Stands Still was a video, excellent song. Open Secrets was one that really grew on me over time. Second Nature, I love from the get-go. Mission is an excellent song. That one, I mean, that is proof positive about Geddy's vocals. And I love Alex's solo that ends the song through the outro. High Water is a great closer. One thing about Rush in the 80s, and throughout their career actually, their songs that ended albums were spectacular. And in fact, in the 80s, the only song that I didn't think was a great closer was the last song on Presto, which was Available Light. But High Water is a fantastic song. It's an excellent closer. Again, another great example of Geddy's vocals. So this was one that was a grower for me. I wouldn't have really liked it too much at age 7 if I had bought it at that point, but it's an album that I like a lot these days. I'd probably have it ranked in the middle of their catalog. I would definitely rank it a 7.5.
Nice. Thanks, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I'm going to throw it over to Tim. Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Take it away, Tim.
Thanks, Marco. I have a real soft spot for this album because I just got into Rush around this time. I was 13. So within the last year, I was seeing videos by them and just thought that, well, I still think that there's no other band like them, you know? And I also didn't know anybody that liked them. So I was years before I met anybody else that liked Rush. So they felt like my band. I know a lot of people think that about them. So Hold Your Fire was the first album that I bought when it was a current release. I didn't buy it as the minute it came out, but I think I probably bought it in like March of '88. As a matter of fact, I still have this. It's the same cassette that I bought back then, and it's been through the mill and back. It's been glued back together because it's wound up on me. And so I'm trying to be objective about it because I do have such a soft spot for it because I got into this and everything else. I was just buying Rush albums whenever I had the money, you know, like Don mentioned, as soon as the allowance came in, I'm going to buy another cassette this week. Well, why don't I buy a Rush cassette? And I remember, you know, unlike a lot of other bands that I liked at the time that had 3-4 albums, for Rush, it seemed like whenever I'd go to the record store, I'd see a Rush album I'd never seen before. They just seemed to have endless albums. So I just kept, well, I got to keep buying them until I don't see anymore. So, if I gotten into the band later on and then went back, would I have as high an opinion of this album? I don't know about that. I might not, but I do think that there are some strong songs on here. I love to hear guitar and I love to hear Alex. And it seems like the only time that Alex comes out to play, as it were, is solo time. And he's got some great solos on this album. Turn the Page has a fantastic solo. Lock and Key, he's just ripping in that solo. But a lot of it is texture. And he is really, he is one to serve the song. Like Time Stands Still doesn't have a solo. He's just playing a nice little arpeggiated piece. But I know he himself has had regrets about this period. The choice of guitar sound that he was using tended to get eaten up by the keyboards because they occupied the same frequencies. I agree with Geddy's vocals. Geddy sounds great on this album. And, I know that's a knock on this band for a lot of people is Geddy's voice. And after a while, I used to go through a period, yeah, I know what you mean. I don't say that anymore. I'm like, you know what? If you don't like him, you don't like him. But I don't want to hear that he can't sing because the guy can sing. Around this album and Presto, I think he may have hit his peak as a vocalist as far as, just being able to sing great melodies. Once they got out of the 70s, and I love all their stuff. I love all their stuff. But in the 70s, he sang in that higher range because he was trying to get above the rest of the band because, they made a lot of racket. It was a great racket. But I don't know who mentioned the fashion sense, but just to give you an idea, for those who don't know, this is what they looked like in 1987. Alex had his sort of Simon Le Bon hair. Neil kind of looked how Neil looked. And then Geddy had that wonderful raccoon style mullet, And the album cover in its simplicity, I've always liked, but I found out in later years that actually Hugh Syme originally this was going to be the front cover, this street scene. And then he said, no, we're going to put that on the inner sleeve. And we're just going to put 3 red balls on the cover. And they said, okay, because you're Hugh Syme and you know what you're talking about. So now I will say this. It was their first album after a run of platinum albums to only go gold, and it never went platinum. It never was recertified. And I don't know if, for what it's worth, I find that when I was in the early 90s, when I was replacing my cassettes and CDs, this one and Presto are the only Rush albums I ever found used on CD. And some dude named Randy had this and wrote his stupid name on it. And the record I found in 92, and it's it or not, but it was a cutout. So I think I paid about $3.99 for this. But it's a great album. It's got great songs on it. I've always had a real love for Open Secrets. That was never a single. I always kind of thought it should have been. To me, that's not a term you hear associated with Rush, but I call that song Laid Back. That's a laid back, late night Rush song, and I always really liked it. The funny thing about Time Stands Still is, I'm surprised it wasn't a bigger crossover hit because it had the Andee Man vocals on it, but she wasn't their first choice. They before they got to her, they contacted Chrissie Hynde from the Pretenders, and she turned it down, and believe it or not, Cyndi Lauper. So, but I think Andee Man had that perfect angelic voice that just cuts through, and the video is kind of silly. But if anybody remembers music videos around that time, a lot of bands were experimenting with that, things going around each other just because they could. And that was Rush's entry into it. Force 10 is a great opener. The one time I did get to see them in concert in 2004 on the R30 tour, I was really happy they put Force 10 in the set. That was always a fun song. Tai Shan, I never gave too many thoughts one way or another about until I saw an interview with Geddy, I think in 2002, where he said the song just kind of feels like an error to him. And then it's since become like the whipping boy of bad Rush songs. And I personally don't think there's such a thing as a bad Rush song. They can't all be Tom Sawyer. They can't all be Limelight. But I just think that Rush never, ever phoned it in. So even if the songs, even if it's not the best album or the best song, they really worked hard and on the album they were working on at the time. Now, I'm going to give this album an 8, and that might seem high if somebody's not a fan of the album, but the fact of the matter is Rush are one of my all-time favorite groups, and for me, they have a lot of 10s, so it's actually a relatively low rating for me, but I can't go any lower than 8 because it was when I was first getting into them. I listened to it all the time. I listened to it again today, and I still really enjoy it. So, I'm going to defend this one, give it an 8.
Thanks, Tim. Awesome points. Peter couldn't make it. Rock Daydream Nation on YouTube. If you want to go check him out, martinpopoff.com. Martin wrote some fantastic books about Rush. He's got those things going on. Why don't we go around and you can make a plug if you have anything to plug. And why don't we go around and ask everybody who had the best hairstyle on Hold Your Fire? So why don't we start with John the Music Nut? Who had the best hairstyle out of the 3 Rush members? And if you have anything to plug, go ahead and plug it.
Geddy Lee did. I like the ponytail that worked for him. I have nothing to plug. I'm just happy to be here. Do what you love.
Joe, who had the best hairstyle? Anything to plug?
No one had a good hairstyle here. I just feel that people are afraid to say Rush did bad things. And I don't know. I know I was the only guy to criticize this album, but I think this is all bad, except, a couple listenable songs. But no, it's just a terrible period for the band. I think they were following trends. And no, it's just all awful. And I'm glad they returned to the hard rock style, years later. Alex Lifeson even said, where's my guitar? We gotta eventually put that in. But anyway, I'm on Ryan's YouTube channel occasionally. Also, I just want to plug Tim's book, which is awesome. The Unspooled. It's a great package. If you're out there, buy that. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. John C., anything to plug? And who had the best hair on Hold Your Fire?
Oh boy, best hair. Well, I'm sorry, that raccoon rat tails mullet thing that Geddy, no, I can't do that. I would probably say Neil, because I think looking at Joe's picture there with Alex looking like the guy from Flock of Seagulls, I don't know about that. So yeah, I probably would go Neil. I got my own little music corner of the world, and just did a thing with Rock Daydream Nation, talking about super groups, building your own super group from Uriah Heep, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Rainbow, and Deep Purple, which was a lot of fun. That was a fun one.
Yeah, it was a tough choice.
But I think Ryan from Ryan's Vinyl Destinations, where he and I'm gonna join in on one of his Genesis episodes, talking about Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So looking forward to hopefully doing that soon. Other than that, that's all I got.
Thanks, John.
Just happy to be here as always.
Thank you. Tim, anything to plug? And who had the best hair on Hold Your Fire?
Joe, thank you very much for your kind words about Unspooled. I really appreciate it. John, yours is on the way. The books have arrived. All of the have been shipped. And if anybody's interested in ordering for me, if you want to find out what the book's about, my YouTube channel, Sim's Vinyl Confessions, there's a video where I flip through the book and show a lot of it off. Email me, timsvinylconfessions@gmail.com if you're interested in ordering. Let me see. Well, obviously, I don't think any of them had great hair during that period, but I think Geddy's was the most useful because he could store stuff up here while he was on stage. And even he looks back on it now and wonders, what was I thinking? But Neil probably had the most conservative haircut. And you could take that picture of Neil and you could put that in 1982, or you could put it in 1996, except he started wearing the Tams. But Alex is very Miami Vice, very, very new wave. And Geddy just, it's so bad, it's good.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And Don, who had the best hair? And do you have anything to plug?
Neil had the best hair because it looked like a normal human being. And it was just nice short hair. I've seen pictures of him in drumming magazines, and it looked a little different than in the album artwork. It was just a nice short haircut, which looks fine to me. And I do feel sorry for Joe, because I know what it's like, Joe, when you hate something so much and you're like, this is a total piece of garbage. Are these people out of their mind? Normally I'm you, because my favorite Rush albums are, Fly By Night, Caress of Steel, 2112. That's what I want to hear. I don't know why. this album doesn't bother me. Maybe it's the same reason why it doesn't bother Tim, because of a sentimental attachment. Because I was the first one I was old enough to buy when it first came out. So I feel sorry for you. You're the only one that hates it here. But I don't have anything to
Sorry
plug.
for me. I mean,
But I'll show you. This is the Martin Popoff Limelight book about Rush in the 80s. It's a good book if you really like Rush in the 80s. Rush in the 80s is not my favorite time period, but it's a great book. But I like the Anthem book better, Rush in the 70s, because that's where it was at for Rush, really, I think. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. So just to clarify, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we did rate this album 7.16 out of 10. That's our consensus rating. So it's a pass. It's a decent rating. Other than that, follow and like our channel, The Contrarians. Follow us over at Patreon if you want to join these discussions. We also have a Ko-Fi and a TeePublic. And thanks everybody for showing up tonight. We had a wonderful panel, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.